Your lack of people skills are holding you back. Your job isn't to be right. It is to do right by your stakeholders, by your staff, and by your organization's mission. Challenge to execute the vision is not the lack of tech. It is the lack of change in human behavior. Feeling of security matters as much as fixing security. Whoa, that blew my mind. Remember, you don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate. I've always been a big fan of water sports. Swimming, kayaking, snorkeling, you name it. I had been doing these for many years. Then one time I decided I wanted to go deeper in water. I wanted to go diving. But I had never done diving before. So my husband and I, we decided to book ourselves an intro diving course, a shallow one to begin with. By shallow, I still mean at least 10 meters deep. Now here's the thing. If you've ever done diving, you probably know this, and if you haven't, this is how it works. Before you go into water, you're not only given the gear you need to breathe underwater, but you're also taught the sign language for communication underwater, how to regulate your mask, your fins, your oxygen cylinder, and the buoyancy of your body, how to navigate the underwater world. Now, if you think about it, that experience is very similar to starting a CISO role or a security leadership role, but with a big caveat. Just like the rules of land are not enough for diving and navigating the underwater world, the rules of theory and risk management are not enough to lead in cybersecurity. Unlike in diving, where you get a proper diving instructor, in cybersecurity, if you're an aspiring leader or a current leader, no one's really showing you how to breathe, how to communicate, and how to navigate that leadership underwater world. Today, I'll share with you my top 5 biggest lessons I wish I had known in my 20s. I learned these along the way through my own journey and in interviewing top security leaders from around the world. This will help you avoid all the years of trial and error that many of us still go through, and to get you to navigate your career and the leadership world much more effectively and get to your goals much faster. So let's dive in. Number 1, your lack of people skills are holding you back. A couple of years ago, I read this quote from Reid Hoffman, founder of LinkedIn. He said, "I believe starting a company is like jumping off a cliff and assembling a plane on the way down." Whoa, that blew my mind. That's what I felt like when I started my journey as a CISO. Jumping off a cliff and trying to build a plane as I took the dive. But while my subject matter skills and my experience in the industry got me to take that dive, I wasn't ready with my gear. The gear that I truly needed for that leadership role. And no, these were not technical skills or the subject matter skills. As I stepped into the CISO role, became a 3-time CISO, won an award for top number 3 CISO in EMEA, talked to hundreds of CISOs and interviewed top global CISOs for a masterclass, I made one of the biggest realizations of my career. No amount of theory, no amount of just learning risk management or cloud security, and no long list of certifications will prepare you, nor did it prepare any of these top security leaders that I interviewed, that I've talked to for many years, to be ready for the CISO role or for security leadership role. Because your technical skills may get your foot in the door, but it's your people skills that will ultimately move the needle forward. 99% think that people skills matter only at leadership level. Not true. That rule applies at all levels in cybersecurity and not just in leadership. Let me give you an example. I worked as a hacker for many years. My success in the role was not just in finding vulnerabilities and breaking in, but in motivating stakeholders to prioritize to do something about them, especially the nasty ones, the ones that could break the business. That motivation only happens when you are good at people skills like listening, expectations management, and negotiation. So let me say it again. Here's your one harsh truth that no one's telling you. Your subject matter skills may get your foot in the door, but it's your people skills that will ultimately move the needle forward. And no, you don't need to be an extrovert to be great at people skills. You just need to learn these skills like any other and understand a bit of human behavior and psychology. I teach all of these skills in my security leadership masterclass. All of these skills that you need in your arsenal already like yesterday if you want to grow your career in cybersecurity, especially in cybersecurity leadership. Number 2, your biggest trait as a leader is your ability to execute your vision. So I was saying earlier on, when I took that dive into the CISO world for the very first time, It felt like I was doing all of that without any masks or fins or parachute or a plane. Despite that, in the beginning, it felt amazing and exhilarating. I felt the adrenaline and I felt it was extremely exciting. But I knew it was not sustainable in the long term. Over time, I had to make sure that I had built my plane fast enough and in time so I wouldn't crash, that I had my mask, my fin, my oxygen tank so I could breathe, that I had learned the skills of this underwater leadership world to not only survive but thrive in this world. And I must admit, I've been extremely fortunate to have served not once, not twice, but thrice as a CISO of top global companies, providing critical infrastructure and services that are necessary for the functioning of the society. I've been fortunate to not hit a wall or burn out during my CISO journey. I've been fortunate that I managed to learn how to dive successfully after jumping in. But again, here's the sad part. No one's showing you the difficult side of it. It wasn't easy. I had to learn all those skills by years of trial and error. Not only did I need to learn those skills, but I needed to learn how to bring them together in a vision and to put them into action to execute that vision. What do I mean by that? Let me give you another example. So, early on in my career, when I was working as a hacker, I used to think very often that my job was to be right, that my job was to show the business what was wrong and what they needed to fix. That was my job, to show them the right way to do it, and that I knew better than the business what was right. But I couldn't be more wrong. I've seen hundreds of cybersecurity professionals in our industry suffer from this syndrome of singular mentality. Because your job isn't to be right. Yep, you didn't mishear me. I said that. Your job isn't to be right. It is to do right by your stakeholders, by your staff, and by your organization's mission. To do that, you need to bring all these skills together to enable your business mission. The number one thing for that is your ability to build a vision that supports that mission and to execute that vision. So then I decided I needed to learn from those who came before me. I started talking to hundreds of CISOs that came before me. I started talking to my peers, my friends. And based on all of that, I built my vision and I executed it over and over. After doing it over and again, here's one thing I learned from my own journey and theirs. The number one habit or trait of a successful, effective, influential leader isn't to be right. It is your ability to have a vision, your ability to tell a story around that vision, to be able to execute that vision, and to do all of that over and over. Number 3, negotiation makes up for 90% of your role in a day-to-day basis. In one of the CISO roles as I started, I had zero budget, zero team, and zero seat at the big table in the C-suite. As it still happens so often today for a lot of CISOs, even in big corporations. But within 1 year, I got my own budget. I grew my team from 0 to 10 plus people globally within just 1 year. And I got a seat at the executive table, truly deserving of a CISO role, and the rest is history. How did I do that? I grew up learning to negotiate on the streets of India without even realizing I was learning a very powerful skill. Among the many skills you will learn and need in cybersecurity, the number one skill you will need is your power of negotiation. You don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate. But how the heck can you do that, especially when you jump off the cliff or take that dive and you don't have any of your arsenal with you? So let's start by breaking one of the biggest myths in cybersecurity industry. 99% within our industry believe that risk management is the most important part of your job. I'm telling you, no, it's not. Negotiation and stakeholder management is 90% of your job, day in and day out. Let me give you some tangible real world examples. Think about it. How do you get the budget? You need to know how to negotiate. How do you get the business to prioritize fixing vulnerabilities? You need to know how to negotiate. How do you get the leadership to make the right security investments? Again, as I said before, you don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate. More than 90% of what you will do in a cybersecurity leadership role will be negotiation in your day to day. Sure, this is especially true at higher levels, but it's also highly relevant in all roles in cybersecurity. Negotiation is that one skill that you cannot afford to miss and not learn. Now, here's a big misconception about negotiation. People think negotiation is about winning and getting what you want. It's not. The best negotiations are win win, in which all parties get something out of it and everyone feels like they won. If you won at the cost of someone losing or even feeling like they lost, that's not a real win. That's very short sighted and a short term game. I dig way deeper on negotiation techniques, stories, and tactics in my cybersecurity masterclass. However, through all the negotiations I have done on a day to day basis throughout my roles over the last 20 years, I have realized this is the one framework I have used and the best negotiations I have done using these 7 steps in this framework. So here's my 120 seconds negotiation masterclass right here for you. My 7 steps for a powerful negotiation. 1. Use the power of manifestation because intent matters way more than you can think. For example, I had a strong belief that I'll get the CISO role a seat at the table. I don't know exactly how, I didn't know when, but I manifested it. 2. Negotiate when you don't need something right away because you don't want to ask in the moment of desperation. That way, you won't have leverage. What you want is to anticipate your needs and the needs of other parties in advance. 3. Remember, there's always room for negotiation. Most of the times, a no is not a hard no, it's not written in stone. You just need to listen and read between the lines. The first time I suggested that the CISO role deserved a seat at the table, I was told no, right out. It didn't stop me because I knew that role was worthy of that seat because of the value it was bringing to the organization. 4. Make everyone on the negotiation table feel they won. Focus on win win. As I said earlier, the best negotiations make everyone feel like they won. In getting the CISO role at a seat at the table, I was ultimately putting enable the business mindset first. When my successor stepped in my role, it came with that seat that I had negotiated for. It was a win for the organization, not just for me. 5. Be pleasantly persistent. Just because something didn't happen now doesn't mean it won't happen tomorrow. Persistence, especially pleasant persistence, backed by strong stories and facts, will get you what you want. It took me more than 6 months to get that seat at the table. 6. Always ask for feedback. Until you learn to take feedback, you won't really know what you did wrong or how to up your negotiation game because it's a long term game. Don't be short sighted. 7. Know your worth and dare to walk away when necessary. If a bottle of water is worth $30, you won't place it in the grocery store and ask for $30. You probably place it at an airport. Sometimes you need to just walk away from a wrong environment. Remember, you don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate. Negotiation is that one skill that will get you the best ROI in your career. But don't be short sighted and don't forget the power of win win. Number 4, the lack of change in human behavior is costlier than technology. Remember what I said earlier? The number one habit or trait you have as a security leader is your ability to have a vision, your ability to tell your story around that vision, to execute that vision, and to repeat it over and over. That is what truly influences change. But I've seen this time and again. People have a vision or an idea, but they suck at executing it. Now, why? Because this is the number one mistake they make. They think the most important thing that they need to help them execute their vision successfully is technology. However, the number one challenge to execute their vision is not the lack of tech, it is the lack of change in human behavior, which requires much more effort, much more time, and much more resources, and ultimately much more costlier if not done correctly. Change in human behavior is also much more important than buying any tech and throwing it at the problem. I still remember when I was working as a CISO for one of the global companies. I was the first CISO in that company at an executive level, a part of the management team. I had the budget, I had the resources, I had the tech. However, COVID-19 had hit and the global workforce had gone hybrid. It had changed the entire threat landscape of that business. One of the many projects that my team and I were leading at the time was strengthening of the security around equipment, shadow IT, workstations, bring your own devices, etc. Now, it was a really tricky project to execute. But as I said, it was not because of the budget, not because of the tooling, not even because of staffing. I had the right people for the job. What it truly needed to be successful was a massive shift in human behavior and psychology around the necessary security changes that were coming to make things more secure and even more productive. But in this case, which also meant for workforce and employees to lose a part of their massive freedom they've had over years in how they operated. A shift in mindset. That project executed successfully, but to get there, I still remember having to create special employee representatives groups, sending out a lot of communication before, during, and after key decisions were made. Way more communication than I probably normally would do for any project, and taking into account employees' inputs and feedbacks as a part of the entire process. Almost like a democracy of a nation, but doing that in a private corporation. Now, I get it. In most cases, the CISO or the C suite would just have made the decision unilaterally, inform the organization, and just move forward with those changes. However, that's only a short term solution. The key criterion for success of such a project is not just decision making, but also clear and timely communication and providing people the platform to be heard and taking their input and feedback into building that solution. Without that, there is no incentive for people to change or their behavior to change or for them to accept the change that's coming. Simon Sinek once said, people don't dislike change, they dislike sudden change. I think that's only partially true. There's more to it. Because it's not just about whether the change is sudden or not. People also don't like change, even if it's not sudden, when they're not involved at all, or when they feel they had zero influence on the decision of change. So just being informed, even if it's done way in advance, is not enough. Involving those that the change impacts is much more critical. Needed change in human behavior or lack thereof will make it or break it for you much more than tech ever will. That lack of change in human behavior will be much more costlier than any money you'll throw at technology. Number 5, feeling of security matters as much as fixing security. ChatGPT released end of November in 2022. Within 1 month, it had already garnered 100 million users. By the time we reached March 2023, the ChatGPT adoption had already hit the highest point of the Kruger-Dunning curve, where almost everyone felt like GPT was holy grail of AI, like it would almost cure cancer or something, followed by the realization, oh wait, it does not always know stuff. So while on one hand, people were amazed by the competence of generative AI, on the other, suddenly they realized AI was often hallucinating and sometimes even just completely inaccurate. Despite that, as the entire world saw Gen AI reach the hype curve, yet one other key thing happened around that time. I saw it, and likely you experienced it as well, and various studies confirmed since then that more than 70% of employees were now using external tools like ChatGPT or other Gen AI tools at work. I still remember my CEO coming to me with panic if he had any plans of how to manage this new and upcoming trend. My team and I already knew every 2 out of 3 employees were using some external Gen AI tool, and this was just the beginning. There was no stopping them. In fact, that would have been madness and completely counterproductive to security, data, and business. Instead, we implemented an AI policy that wasn't just telling them what not to do, but also guided the workforce on what they can do and how to use Gen AI and LLMs safely, securely, and ethically. And we didn't just stop there. After that, we went on to working on how to leverage LLM based tools for our business, such as using Microsoft Copilot to ensure we're building the blocks and the foundation internally within our business for employees to leverage AI for real business cases. Now, why am I telling you this story? As my CEO came to me worried and concerned about how we were going to deal with this explosion of AI tools, and if we were doing something about it, I was able to tell her, yes, we're on it. We were already 2 steps ahead. She was extremely happy and quite frankly relieved we were on it before she even knew about it. Now, as a security leader or even as a security professional, your job is not only to be aware of the changing trends, but also to act swiftly on them and to know what and when to do something about it. One of the key examples that I teach my students in my masterclass is the trends and the use cases of AI in cybersecurity. For example, in the near future, if you had an ongoing incident, then as a SOC analyst or a security leader, you would be able to ask AI something along the lines: did we have any security breaches in the past similar to this incident? Could this become a potential crisis for any of the critical business functions that we are providing? If yes, provide me the playbook of what exactly we did last time to contain it. What were the lessons learned? What took you or takes you hours or days today could take you only a few minutes in the near future. And your job as a CISO and a security leader is not only to anticipate trends and changes, but also to remove panic before it settles in and ease the pain of your stakeholders. The word security is a Latin word, which comes from the Latin word securus. Se means without, and cura means worry. So the word literally means without worry. No one wants to be caught off guard. So that feeling of security matters as much as fixing security itself. Because if you didn't add to that feeling of security, if you didn't remove the panic, if you didn't ease that pain, then you added almost zero value as a leader. Feeling of security matters as much as fixing security. So that's all for today. For more insights on leading in cyber, check out my newsletter at monicatalkcyber.com. This is Monica signing off.